Welcome to the New Zonderlings podcast, where we explore the weird and bizarre. Here are your hosts, Noah and Jeanette.
Hello and welcome to New Zonderlings. My name is Noah and I'm joined by my co-host Jeanette.
Thank you, Noah. Hi to all my weirdos out there.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening. I got a doozy of a one today.
Yes, this one's called
Medicinal Cannibalism.
What's
the matter?
I just can't imagine. That's the end of my statement.
I'm sorry you can't. It happens. It is a thing that happens.
Medicinal cannibalism.
The story I'm going to read you today, I found, like I always do, looking for other things, but it's kind of a review of a book more than anything. But I like historical nonfiction. Everybody don't leave the podcast. It's interesting. But I did want to be a history major my first go at college.
That's true.
I quit 3 years in, which was really dumb. I didn't get to do it. But I do enjoy reading historical things. So.
Yes. Does this have anything to do with those people that were trapped on the mountain during the Oregon Trail?
No.
Okay.
The Donner Party?
Yes.
No.
Okay. This is something else.
No, this was kind of like an anthology. This guy's name is Richard Sugg.
Oh, Sugg.
S-U-G-G. I want to say shrug. I don't know why, but I'm having a really hard time with it. It's Richard Sugg.
I can
say it together.
Can tell you're struggling.
I'm mentally struggling with his name, but he was a historian and he wrote some books, and I actually bought 2 of them. I didn't read them all before we got.
I didn't read them or anything.
Oh, I read some of it. I read the one that was to the Victorians. So he wrote all the way from medieval times to now.
Okay.
About using the body for different medical practices. And so it gets kind of gruesome.
Okay.
You ready for that?
I'm starting to see where this is going.
So this article was written by Maria Dolan, and I thought she did a really great job. I'm going to read it to you. Sweetness and wit, sure, but mummy? Now she's referring to... Hang on a second. Quit trying to peek at my paper.
I'm not reading the paper.
She's referring to the last line of a 17th century poem by John Donne, which prompted Louise Noble's quest. Women, the line read, are not only sweetness and wit, but mummy possessed.
Mummy possessed. What does that mean exactly?
Well, that was her question. This Louise Noble. She was like, what in the world does he mean by mummy possessed?
Mummy possessed.
In search for an explanation, Noble, a lecturer of English at the University of New England in Australia, made a surprising discovery. The word recurs throughout the literature of early modern Europe, from Donne's Love Alchemy to Shakespeare's Othello and Edmund Spenser's The Faerie Queen, because mummies and other preserved and fresh human remains were a common ingredient in the medicine of that time. In short, not long ago, Europeans were cannibals.
Wow, I feel like this has taken quite the leap from a poem to cannibalism.
Well, she was like, why would he say mummy?
Huh.
And we're going to get to that later about why we call mummies mummies.
Mummy.
It has to do with medical cannibalism. So I thought that was interesting too. But
is it interesting?
Yeah, it's interesting.
We're going to make a t-shirt that just says interesting.
Interesting.
Like,
have Noah's face on it.
No. We're going to have interesting, and it's going to wrap around the entire body like several times. The whole shirt's just going to be interesting.
Interesting. It's a very interesting shirt. So Noble wrote a book called Medicinal Cannibalism in Early Modern English Literature and Culture. And then Maria Dolan brings in Richard Sugg of England University's Durham, and his books were called Mummies, Cannibals, and Vampires, The History of Corpse Medicine from the Renaissance to Victorians. That is the book I bought.
Okay.
But he has several. And I bought that book and then the time period right before it.
Right.
I did read some of it, and I think he's really, really good at just setting a scene. Like, that's the kind of history I like. I want to know how everyday people lived.
Yeah.
And how things worked. And he's very, very, very good at just...
he's very well written.
painting the scene for you. You're there, you feel it, you smell it, you taste it. It's disgusting.
Ew. Okay, too much.
Yes. Sometimes it was too much.
Ugh.
I had to put it down a couple times because I was like, ooh, I just
Jeez.
ate lunch. I can't do that. But in his books, he reveals that for several hundred years, peaking in the 16th and 17th centuries, many Europeans, including royalty, priests, and scientists, routinely ingested remedies containing human bones, blood, and fat as medicine for everything from headaches to epilepsy.
So with bones, I can understand bones. You know,
You can understand eating bones?
bone marrow is very, very good for you.
Ew.
Yeah, I know. This isn't going to be a very pleasant topic. However, I do know that, bone marrow is very nutritious. It's very good for you. It's got lots of good things in it, protein, stuff like that. I don't see where there's a lot of blood-borne pathogens. I don't really see ingesting blood, and I don't really see ingesting fat. That just sounds gross.
That is very nasty.
Yeah. Have you seen what fat cells look like?
At my doctor's, they have like a big mass of something yellow sitting on their counter. And it says 5 pounds of fat. So
Yeah.
if that doesn't motivate you to lose some weight, I don't know
That's what it
does.
actually looks like. If you get like shot or stabbed, fat will leak out of you in these little balls of yellow.
I have seen that. I almost cut my finger off once. Fun fact.
Mhm.
And when they went to numb it, I guess the medicine kind of makes it swell up. And I was like, ooh, what is that yellow stuff in my finger? It was fat. Yeah.
Yeah.
I almost passed out during that one.
Yeah, because you weigh 600 pounds, just for the listeners to know.
I do not.
You don't. We weigh like the same.
No, I don't know.
I don't know. We're both pretty small people.
I think you probably have me now.
I think I do now. But
I've recently lost weight, and
You
Noah
have.
has recently
I've
gained
recently
some.
gained. I gained it from you.
But he was really small before.
I was a very small person.
Getting back to the story, mummies were stolen from Egyptian tombs, and skulls were taken from Irish burial sites. Grave diggers robbed and sold body parts.
I like movies about grave robbing.
It's funny that you say that.
A couple, yes. I Sell the Dead is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, you can't hardly find it. I was going to get it on Amazon Prime, and it's not available. So
That sucks.
I guess you have to buy the DVD or find
it's
it
such
somewhere.
a good
somewhere
else.
else.
I Sell the Dead is such a good movie.
Who is the guy who plays in it that's also in Lord of the Rings? He plays Merry.
Yeah. I can't think of his name.
Dominic Monaghan, maybe?
Fact check.
Yeah, I gotta fact check people. Very good movie. If you haven't seen it, it came out in 2008. I suggest everybody rent it, or I guess buy the DVD.
Yeah, I guess
Can't
at
get
this point you're gonna have to.
Can't get it on Amazon Prime, but there might be other streaming places that
It's on AMC Plus,
AMC Plus.
which I guess
At the time of this podcast.
Yes, at the time of this.
They changed so
podcast.
fast.
I
but
guess it's exclusive to them right
it's
now.
kind of like a horror comedy. I know that sounds weird, but it's a genre.
So I will explain it. The gentleman's name is Dominic Monaghan.
I was right.
Yes,
I said his name.
You were correct. But he played in Lord of the Rings as Merry, one of the hobbits. Basically, in short, he plays a gentleman, Arthur Blake, about to be executed by guillotine for the crime of grave robbing. But before he faces the blade, he agrees to confess to Father Duffy, or Ron Perlman, who played
Yes, Ron Perlman is
Hellboy.
Yeah,
Also another great movie by Guillermo del Toro.
he is a very big, imposing man.
Yes, he is. He confesses to Father Duffy in the hope that the priest might be merciful enough to spare his life. He tells his life story. It starts with him, stealing stuff from deceased as a youth, and then he meets this guy, and they kind of get into the business of selling the dead. Hence the name.
Hence the name. I Sell the Dead. Yes.
I believe it's based on a comic book or a book. I don't know for sure.
Well, there's another movie that is actually just about the same as that one. I haven't seen it yet, but I did buy it. I'm going to watch it soon. But it was
We're going to watch it soon.
Oh, yes, because it's got one of our favorite English actors in it. But it's Burke and Hare, and it came out in 2010. And it stars Simon Pegg and Andy Serkis.
I love them both.
Andy Serkis was also in Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
He played Gollum and young Gollum, I guess.
Young Gollum.
Young Gollum.
What was his name?
Smeagol.
Schmeagol.
Smeagol. No, don't. Stop it. It's awful. Anyway, I suggest you watch those movies. The Burke and Hare is a recreation from an older movie that's supposed to be really good.
Yeah.
All of it centers around the same theme: stealing corpses for doctors to do whatever they do with them. And during the time period, because it does take place in the 18th century, I believe.
Right.
That's what's happening.
Hence the guillotine.
People are stealing. Yeah, that's true. I wonder what country that takes place in.
I thought it was Europe.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a continent. I don't know what country.
I meant England. I believe it's England. And I Saw the Dead. As far as the other movie.
Did they use the guillotine?
Sure. We haven't seen
then?
it yet.
I mean, surely they fact check that, but you never know sometimes about movies.
That's true.
Like, I know they were still using it in France.
Well, the French invented the guillotine.
Yeah, it's their baby.
It's what they...
I got some gross news about that later.
Cut the heads off of royalty with. They were like, let's make it more streamlined. And hey, let's make this guillotine.
We can line them up, do 20 at once.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, gross.
Anyways.
So back to the story. We got kind of off on a tangent there. Egyptian mummy, which was crumbled into tinctures to stanch internal bleeding, but other parts of the body soon followed. Skull was a common ingredient taken in powdered form to cure head ailments. So it was like it's a like cures like. So if it came from your head, they'd use it to heal head issues.
This is a very old notion of, if you're sick, you've got a headache, eat some skull bone or something.
It'll help your head because you're eating a head.
Yeah, exactly.
So
you're
nice.
replacing the parts that are bad, which is why they used leeches to take out the bad blood.
Oh, well, yeah. Thomas Willis, a 17th century pioneer of brain science, brewed a drink for apoplexy. I hope I'm saying that.
What is apoplexy?
Apoplexy.
Let me see the word. Point to it.
Apoplexy. Yeah.
Apoplexy. Sure.
Or bleeding that mingled powdered human skull and chocolate.
Oh.
Yeah.
Delicious.
Hot chocolate. Just got somebody's head in it.
Yeah. So. You could hollow out a skull and put hot chocolate into that. Then it just, make it easier. You're giving me a look.
That's just, we're getting morbid, but that's okay. King Charles II of England sipped the king's drops, his personal tincture containing human skull and alcohol. Even the toupee, I love how I love this author who wrote this because she gets so vivid. Even the toupee of moss that grew over a buried skull called usnea,
yeah,
became a prized additive. Its powder believed to cure nosebleeds and possibly epilepsy.
Wow.
Human fat was used to treat the outside of the body. German doctors, for instance, prescribed bandages soaked in it for wounds, and rubbing fat on the skin was considered a remedy for gout. That is nasty.
Yeah, it's pretty gross.
Blood was procured as fresh as possible, while it was still thought to contain the vitality of life.
Yeah, okay.
This requirement made it challenging to acquire, you think?
No kidding.
And this is where I told you the guillotine was going to come back in. The 16th century German-Swiss physician Paracelsus. I mean, that's got to be what that is. Believed blood was good for drinking, and one of his followers even suggested taking blood from a living body. Now, what do we call that, people?
Vampirism. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Is that where you're going with this?
Well, I mean, the name of his book was Cannibals.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point.
Mummies, cannibals, and vampirism. Yeah. So that makes sense. While that doesn't seem to have been common practice, the poor, who couldn't always afford the processed compounds sold in apothecaries, could gain the benefits of cannibal medicine by standing by at executions.
Wow.
Paying a small amount for a cup of the still warm blood of a condemned.
Oh my gosh.
The executor was considered a big healer in Germanic countries, says Doug.
Wow.
He should change his name to Shug.
Shug Knight?
Shug. He was a social leper with almost magical powers. For those who preferred their blood cooked, a 1679 recipe from a Franciscan apothecary describes how to make it into a marmalade.
I'm starting to feel ill listening to you tell me this.
Yeah, I hope nobody's eating while they're
Yeah,
listening
please
to
do
this.
not eat while you're listening to this.
Yeah. So that's where the guillotine thing comes on. So it didn't actually say it had to be a guillotine. It's just anybody who was
Could have been put to the axe.
Could have been axed, could have been hanging. I guess
Hung.
Hunging?
Is it hang?
Could have been the hunging.
Could have been hunged.
Could have been hunged.
Is it hanged? Could have been hanged. It's hanged.
It's hanged.
It's hanged. Moving on.
Anyway, that grammar lesson for today. Rub fat on an ache and it might ease your pain. Push powdered moss up your nose and your nosebleed will stop. If you can afford the King's drops, the float of alcohol perhaps helps you forget you're depressed.
Wow.
Maybe it makes you forget you're drinking somebody's head.
No comment.
In other words, these medicines may have been incidentally helpful. Even though they worked by magical thinking, one more clumsy search for answers to the question of how to treat ailments at the time when even circulation of the blood was not yet understood. So I think what he's trying to say is this is how, medical science progressed. You have to put baby steps, one foot before the other. You have to
test before you can.
Aren't you glad that we live now and not then?
Well, yeah, we couldn't do our podcast.
If you read the first chapter of his book, it makes you so happy you were not born in the Victorian age. It's not funny. Like I said before, he just really lays the stage for you and you're there. You feel it. You feel cold. People are dying of the plague. People are sneezing on you. All sorts of stuff.
Gross.
And he is very descriptive and he puts you there and it sucks. I would not want to live during that time.
Yeah, no kidding.
Another reason human remains were considered potent was because they were thought to contain the spirit of the body from which they were taken. Spirit was considered a very real part of physiology, linking the body to the soul. In this context, blood was especially powerful. They thought the blood carried the soul and did so in a form of vaporous spirits. And that's according to Shug.
Wow.
Sug.
You said it wrong. Again.
Yeah, that's according to Sug. The freshest blood was considered the most robust. Sometimes the blood of young men were preferred, sometimes that of virginal young women. By ingesting corpse materials, one gains the strength of the person consumed. Noble quotes Leonardo da Vinci on the matter. We preserve our life with the death of others, and a dead thing, insensate life remains which, when in its reunited with the stomachs of the living, regains sensitive and intellectual life.
I could tell you struggled with that.
It's just the way they speak.
Well, yes, it's Shakespeare.
Yeah. No, that was Leonardo da Vinci.
Oh, my apologies.
Noah's listening.
Yeah, I totally am. We're talking about hamburgers and cheeseburgers, right? In a way.
Yeah. That's gross. The idea wasn't new to the Renaissance, just newly popular. Romans drank the blood of slain gladiators to absorb the vitality of strong young men.
I've heard that. I think that's where eating the heart comes from.
Yuck.
Yeah.
But I think it's pretty common. People do it to animals.
Yeah, that's true. They do it now to animals.
Yeah.
I have met someone
Hunters.
who ate a deer heart because he was like, I killed that deer. I took a tart and I took a bite.
What kind of accent is that?
It's a Kentucky accent because that's where we live.
I guess. I don't know too many people that talk like that. Okay, we're going to talk about a little bit about religion. It is against our rules, but this is important to the context.
We do have some unsaid rules on our podcast. We try not to talk about religion, and we try not to talk about politics, current politics.
And we try not to do stories where people are murdered.
Yes.
Recently.
We feel like our podcast is better without those aspects because you can become very opinionated, and we want to tell you guys the truth of these stories.
Right. So we never want to take any kind of side politically or religiously or any other way.
So we have no stance.
And we want this to be kind of a fun show too. So we don't want to bring in stories of recently murdered people either, even though we did have the alien hybrid spy episode, but that
was just too much not to tell people about.
By the end of that, you did not feel sorry for that guy.
No, I didn't.
I don't think anybody's upset by his passing, but Back to our story. Even at corpse medicine's peak, 2 groups were demonized for related behaviors that were considered savage and cannibalistic. One was the Catholics, whom Protestants condemned for their belief that the bread and wine taken during Holy Communion were, through God's power, changed into the body and blood of Christ. The other group was Native Americans. Negative stereotypes about them were justified by the suggestion that these groups practiced cannibalism. It looks like sheer hypocrisy, says Beth Conklin, a cultural and medical anthropologist at Vanderbilt University, who has studied and written about the cannibalism in the Americas. People of the time knew that corpse medicine was made from human remains, but through some mental idiocy of their own, those consumers refused to see cannibalistic implications in their own practices.
I can see that, especially the Catholics. You know, it's just bread and wine.
But it symbolizes...
It's a symbol of
the body and blood. Yeah. Conklin finds a distinct difference between European corpse medicine and the New World cannibalism she has studied. The one thing that we know is that almost all non-Western cannibal practice is deeply social in the sense that the relationship between the eater and the one who is being eaten matters. In the European process, this was largely erased and made irrelevant. Human beings were reduced to simple biological matter equivalent to any other kind of commodity medicine. That is quite sad. The good news is the practice dwindled in the 18th century, around the time Europeans began regularly using forks for eating and soap for bathing.
Oh.
All good things that happened.
What's soap made from in that time?
Oh, God. Fat. It was.
Full circle.
Suck found some late examples of corpse medicine. In 1847, an Englishman was advised to mix the skull of a young woman with molasses and feed it to his daughter to cure her epilepsy. It's gross. A belief that a magical candle made of human fat was called a thieves' candle.
Why a thieves' candle?
They believed it could stupefy and paralyze a person. Lasted into the 1880s. A thieves' candle? I don't know. Maybe they got the fat from a condemned person.
Fact check. An especially horrifying variation on such customs was found in Germany. The practice of making so-called thieves' lights, which I believe are these candles. Thieves' lights were candles formed from the body parts of unborn, unbaptized babies.
Oh my gosh!
The lights were especially effective if the mother had been an executed felon.
My lord.
Which is why they are called thieves' candles.
Wow.
That is the only information I could find in a short time.
That is sick. I don't like that at all.
Very scary.
Don't ever get a thieves' candle.
Please don't.
Yeah, no. So moving on with our story. Mummy was sold as medicine in a German catalog at the beginning of the 20th century. And in 1908, a last known attempt was made in Germany to swallow blood at the scaffoldings. Like, Germany is really into this. That country keeps popping up.
I noticed that, especially with the thieves' candles.
That is not to say that we have moved on from using one human body to heal another. So this kind of blew my mind when you got to thinking about it. We kind of think of everything they did back then as very barbaric and disgusting.
Savage.
But, in another couple 100 years, our great-grandchildren might look back and say, what in the world were they thinking? That's nasty. So you never know. But it's kind of the point that she makes in this article. Blood transfusions, organ transplants, and skin grafts are all examples of a modern form of medical cannibalism from the body.
In a way, I can see that. We are getting to the point where we can 3D print skin.
Ew, yeah.
It's not, I don't really know the process, but it's starting to become a manufactured process. It's all synthetic now.
I think that's all gross, but it's good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because then you don't have to rob a dead body for anything.
Exactly.
Yeah, they do take a lot of things.
Person.
Yeah, they do take a lot of things from dead bodies. Eyes and corneas and all the organs I think they can harvest, right?
Especially if you're an organ donor.
Maybe not your brain.
I don't know. I wouldn't think so. They might take a part of it.
If any of the listeners are really interested in this, there is a YouTuber named Caitlin Doughty. I believe that's how you say her last name. But she has a YouTube channel called Ask a Mortician, and she is great. I've read all her books and I've watched all her videos, and she's a mortician and she owns her own funeral home, and she knows everything there ever is to know about rites and different practices, and she's gone all over the world and saw how everybody else treats how they put their loved ones to rest, and it's just really interesting. And she worked at a crematory, so that was, yeah, she's got some really interesting stories,
I bet,
about that. But she's a great one. Just throwing that out there. I don't know her or anything, but I love her work. You know how I mentioned earlier that we're going to talk about mummies and how they got their name?
Yes.
Yeah. There was a substance that they called mummy that resulted from the exposure of the mummy process on the skin. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there are different kinds of mummy. If you're just thinking about Egyptian mummies where they wrapped them and dried them in the salt and baking soda or
turned them
whatever
into beef jerky.
It does happen on to their skin too, but I think this article I'm referring to speaks more about sun-dried mummies. I know that's nasty.
We're getting into some very nasty practices.
Anyway, mummy was it.
The end product was described as resinous, hardened, black shining surface of a somewhat acrid and bitterish taste and a fragrant smell. Disgusting.
Yeah, so that's what they're talking about, and that was the substance they called mummy. So they didn't actually call these dead people mummy.
So mummies weren't mummies. The stuff they were harvesting from them were called mummy.
Bitumen. Do you know what that word is?
No.
Okay, so it's a substance used by the ancient Egyptians in embalming.
Oh, okay. Maybe I do know what that is then.
Okay.
I think I've heard it, but I didn't know.
I think a lot of people have heard it.
The definition.
But in short, what our ramblings are all about.
What we've been rambling about this whole time
is mummy was actually referring to a certain substance that either occurred naturally on the skin of dead people that were mummified, or it was actually a concoction that Egyptians used to mummify.
Right.
So either way, they called that stuff mummy.
Mummy.
And then over time, it started just referring to what we think of as a mummy now, and that's just been the word of it now.
That makes sense why it's mummification.
Right.
Okay. That word makes a lot more sense to me now.
So mummies used to be used for a couple different things. I mean, we've already talked about a couple, but I'm just going to go through a couple more real quick. A blood thinner, a painkiller, a cough suppressant, anti-inflammatory, a menstrual aid, and means of promoting wound healing. They also recommended, there was a Dr. James who recommended cadaver skin for difficult labors and hysteric affections of women.
Wow.
I don't know what they did with it exactly.
Let's just end it there.
The article doesn't really tell you that, but I think we can all use our imagination there.
Or not. You don't have to use your imagination.
You know, I didn't really research this, but I just remember seeing a special about it. Do you remember a guy named Michael Rockefeller?
No.
He's from the famous Rockefellers.
I know of the Rockefellers.
The family.
Right.
Michael Rockefeller was son of Vice President Nelson Rockefeller. And he disappeared in the Dutch New Guinea, I should say. I almost said Papua New Guinea.
They ate him?
Well, that's what they believe happened to him. There are pictures of him with the tribe, and he looks like he's really involved with them, and they kind of give him a special place of honor. And he's wearing their like ceremonial headgears and stuff, and all the clothing that went along with that. And then he was just gone, and they're pretty sure that they ate him. But
what a way to go!
The whole point of me bringing him up, I'm pretty sure he knew the score. He studied these people, the native tribes, and he had been there before, and he was trying to trade some of their it And I think they just, in their culture, it was completely different. It was an honor to be cannibalized. So it meant that you were special to them. I don't think I'd want to be that special to anybody, but
I guess he was very special to them.
In order for the whole tribe to eat you and to take you into themselves, it meant that you held a very high place to them.
Right.
So that's a theory about what happened to Michael Rockefeller. But there are actual photos of him that I think might back that theory up.
Oh, don't say that.
I'm not of him being eaten, but like I said, he's dressed in their ceremonial garb.
He's been accepted.
Yes, it's obvious that they've given him like place in the tribe, and then he just disappears. And that they were known to do that. They'd give somebody, like, they treat him like kings for several months.
Right.
And then they were eaten.
I think that's all the time we have for today.
Oh, so what do you think about it? There's so much more that could be said about this subject.
There is.
It's really, really deep.
I think there's a place for it. Not in today's time.
Oh, God, no.
But there is a place for it in history. I do think it was important to get to the point where we are now from it. But it's not anything I want to hear more about. It was gross.
No, you don't want to do a second episode on it?
No.
Because there is more than enough information to do 3 or 4 episodes, probably.
Maybe we'll do vampires one day.
Vampires?
Maybe. Those of you that follow us on TikTok, basically our social medias, you may have seen us communicating with an account named Past Resurrected. They have agreed to take us on a ghost hunt. And
yay!
I wanted to surprise you with this as well. So we will be going on a ghost hunt soon.
Where?
I'm not sure yet. That's still in the works.
That's important to me.
But go check him out. He's on TikTok. He used to do stuff like we did. He used to talk on a radio show about weird and interesting things. So we definitely have a lot to talk to him about. And I think it'd be great to go on a ghost hunt with him. He does this stuff all the time. Go check his TikTok out. It's at past.resurrected. He's a good friend of mine. Look for an episode coming out on that soon. We're going to have him on the show, and he might have us on his show and all kinds of stuff.
Yay.
So like what you heard? Like, subscribe, and share us with your friends. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, TikTok, and X at News Underlings.
You can use the link in the description to send us a message. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the News Underlings podcast. Be sure to check out other episodes of this podcast, when Noah and Jeanette will once again explore the weird and bizarre, right here on the News Underlings podcast.